So Jeff, my best friend's gay, but he likes my other friend who isn't gay, who likes my other friend, but she likes my gay friend, but my gay friend doesn't like her. I like them both. Does that mean I'm gay or bi?
Hey Jen, have you ever sat across the table from a teenager and felt like our friend Jeff felt in that video?
Oh, Iona, like this?
Yeah, kind of like that.
Oh, I felt that way so many times, and I just wished I could have more and better resources.
Well, that's why we're here, and that's why you're here. We're here to bring you some practical ideas and tips for taking your relationship with teenagers further and taking you and them closer to the heart of God.
We want you to jump in with both feet, glean all that you can, and thank you for doing the things you do.
Do you ever feel confused about all the generation names that are floating around? There are currently 6 generations alive: the GI generation, the silent generation, the baby boomers, Gen X, the millennials or Gen Y, and now Generation Z. Gen Z begins around the year 2000, and we're talking about the generation of those who are aged around 20 and younger. They account for 18% of the world's population, and these teens want to change the world. They're hugely entrepreneurial, responsible, and influential. They're cause-oriented, and they value diversity and plurality. They're transparent, self-reliant, flexible, and they desire personal freedom. Honesty and integrity are high values. These guys are Generation We, not Generation Me. They're especially excited about the idea of being a people leader. They're all about authentic relationships and service. But they're also known as the I generation, the distracted generation, or screenagers. They've been raised on screens, and they can dedicate up to 27% of their waking hours to screen time. Most use an average of 5 screens at a time, and 87% have their phone within arm's reach, day or night. They're used to instant action and satisfaction, and they crave immediate and constant feedback. They have short attention spans. Up to 11% of this generation have been diagnosed with ADHD. They're so used to on-demand entertainment that they can't handle boredom. They've been raised with schedules full of good activities, but they often experience too much stress and a fear of making mistakes. Anxiety and depression are real for them, and there's increasing evidence that too much tech has a negative impact on mental health. There's a growing lack of empathy and exhaustion from never recharging away from technology. Their pace of life provides few margins for solitude or silence. What they feel is more significant for them than what is true. They've grown up in a time of redefined families, identities, and sexuality, and morality is undefined and questionable. They're used to having input, and they want buy-in. They want to have freedom to question what's happening, express dissent, or wrestle with ideas. But they're not so used to face-to-face communication. They're yearning for it, so we need to teach them. Part of your role may be to help Gen Zs have freedom from their helicopter parents and learn how to feel safe in a world that feels threatening. We need to help them heal from early and prolonged exposure to an online world of cyberbullying, sexting, and porn. Authentic relationships are key to helping them understand the systematic devaluing of human life as seen in pornography. These kids have the ability to be self-directed and entrepreneurial. We need to give them freedom. We need to encourage them to run and help them move past their fears. Generation Z has grown up with less church and religious input in their lives than nearly any generation before them, and that's where we can play a role. We have the one thing they're not so likely to buy online, and that's Jesus. We need to pray with and for these teens that they'll be the generation that truly provokes change in our world.
High school it's tough. like wanted to fit in so badly when I was in grade 8. I wanted to be popular, so I was doing things that I shouldn't have been doing.
I thought being bad was cool. Like, I thought that it made you fit in, because it honestly did. People kind of looked up to you when you did that.
I was messing around, like partying a lot, doing stupid stuff, smoking, drinking, like missing for weeks.
I'm really sensitive, so like people's like words and like opinions kind of really affected me.
Watching like my mom being so scared and like not knowing, you know, what was gonna happen for us.
I felt like I was almost stupid in a way, or like I was like different from everyone else.
I've seen too much. I've been through too much. I've heard too much. Like, I don't know. My dad's in jail for life right now.
Well, personally, like my best friend, last year, she attempted suicide. So, so she was like in the hospital. So.
As a young youth worker, I had a deep desire to see the lives of young people changed. I love the stories of God at work in people's lives, and I wanted to be part of that. I was really nervous and not entirely sure that I had what it took to connect with these teens because my life was so different from theirs. But I was willing to step in and see what God would do. After months and months of giving everything I had to love some really difficult street-entrenched teens, I recognized that I wasn't seeing any kids changing at all, unless you count the ones that seemed to be in even more trouble than when I met them. I was ready to quit. If I couldn't make a difference, maybe it was just time to step aside. And then a wiser and older youth worker asked me a tough question. Was it possible I was involved with teens for all the wrong reasons? At first, I was kind of offended. When I started, I knew it would be tempting to get my need to feel valuable or needed or even popular met through hanging out with teens. But I was pretty sure I had a handle on that. What I really wanted to do was to love these teens so that they'd make better choices, so that they'd live better lives, even so that they'd find and follow Jesus. All great things, but the "so that" was the problem. Without realizing it, I was thinking my love and involvement with the teens was a currency that would buy something good in their lives, rather than a gift given unconditionally because of the gift of love I'd been given by God. When it seemed like my love wasn't working, I felt discouraged and was ready to quit. But the problem was that I was loving so that something would happen, rather than loving because of what God was doing in me. 1 John 4:19 is a verse we've all heard, but think about this in the context of youth work. We love because He first loved us. We step into the lives of teenagers because Jesus first stepped into our lives. That's it. And that's the best reason ever. So you're saying, is it wrong to hope that my time with teens will make an impact? Well, of course not. But I want to warn you that sometimes hope for change can subtly turn into expectation of change. And if my expectations aren't fulfilled, I find that I either feel like a failure, I'm obviously not cut out for this, or I feel disappointed in God. He's obviously not doing His part. Or I get frustrated with the kids. Why aren't they changing? What's wrong with them? All three of these make me want to walk away because this just isn't the deal I signed up for. But God's not about deals. He's about free gifts. And once we truly recognize the magnitude of the free gift He has given us and keeps giving us every day because He wants to, we're freed to love with no return as well. Loving because we are loved.
working with teens isn't all just one-on-one conversations and mentoring appointments. Sometimes you get to be with a whole bunch of kids all at once, and it can be just a little bit chaotic. So how do we keep things under control? Often we can move to being rule-based. We know that clear expectations and high accountability equal good behavior. Maybe we could just make a list, and then if everyone just keeps those rules, we'll have good behavior, right? Well, except that will be one really long list, and I don't think any of us want to be the rule police at the drop-in or your afternoon program. We want relationship, which means we have to call our kids to more. Sometimes I want teens to live in behaviors that aren't realistic for a group of kids who don't know Jesus yet. I want them to smoke less or swear less or treat each other with kindness and gentleness. But those teens just aren't there yet. God is in process with them, but the outward workings may not be the first things to change. I think there are 3 main things we can do to help the teens we love manage their own behaviors. The first thing we can do is to start with clear expectations. Simple and short, not a long list of crazy. Things that are easily lived out with a goal of keeping everyone safe. Sometimes having teens help you create the list will help you keep to a heart focus more than a list of rules. Maybe instead of no swearing, ask teens to show love and respect for others in their language. Or instead of no secular music, you could work together to read lyrics before things play in a way to help teens begin to examine their world and other ways to live. The second thing we can do is to think about relationship. And because relationship is the key to our work, we want to make sure we help teens feel loved and not punished. Most of the teens we see likely haven't grown up with consistent expectations, so we're teaching them something completely new. They're human and they will fall short, but we can show them grace. Talk with teens about the human they want to become and work together toward that rather than pushing a kid to keep the rules. And remember to think through your expectations. We all have behaviors we prefer, but some behaviors are necessary. Call teens toward the necessary actions, but allow them to be themselves while they do it. And finally, always show them way more love than they can imagine. Remember what Romans 5:8 tells us. This is the essence of unconditional love. It gives completely, absolutely without conditions. Jesus' love never waited, never demanded, never manipulated. It was not something given in response to good behavior or even belief. It was there before we did anything to deserve it. We know that sometimes critical occurrences do happen. A fight breaks out, a teen wrecks something in anger, or groups of teens get upset with one another. Take a look in the leader guide to see our best practices for completing a critical occurrence report, and talk with your supervisor to see what your policies for dealing with extreme events when they happen.
Going into high school, I thought it was going to be fun. I would meet new people, make new friends, and just have a great time. During high school, I got bullied a lot. I got picked on for how I looked and who I was, and people just never understood me at all. My own friends just kept ditching me. Whenever they'd want to hang out, they would never call me or anything. They would just go out on their own. I felt alone more than anything. I started harming myself, I started cutting, and I started drinking to take away the pain, but it never really helped. My friends, when they saw my arms, they would just say that I wanted attention and that I wasn't really hurting. I just wanted people to see that and feel sorry for me, but they didn't understand at all how much I was hurting. During high school, things never really died down at all. I still got bullied, and my so-called friends just started picking on me as well, and I had no one. One day, I felt that life would be better if I wasn't around and that people would be better off without me. I tried overdosing to try and kill myself, and I ended up in the hospital. After that, I realized that it was a huge mistake, that I had hurt people the same way that they had hurt me. I got involved with YFC in a youth group, and getting involved with that was probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. I ended up going on a youth trip to Florida, and it just changed my life around completely. Just meeting people who are like me and knowing that I'm not alone in this. In the future, I want to be a child and youth worker because growing up like this, I know how hard it is and how much it really helps to have someone there for you, and I just want to help kids as much as I can. If I didn't have YFC, I probably would still be in a dark time. I wouldn't have very many people to talk to at all about this, or I wouldn't have anyone who understands what I'm going through. And I'd probably still be in a really rough state, and I don't know if I would be here today without YFC. They've supported me, they've helped me through my darkest times, and thank you so much to them for what they've done for me. They're honestly the greatest people I've ever met, and they've helped me become a strong person today, and thank you so much.
When I was a teenager, I got it into my mind that I needed a mentor. Now, I really didn't know what that was, but I'd read about it somewhere and thought it sounded great. So I started asking women in my church, and person after person turned me down. I felt like the kid still standing after both sides have been picked for the baseball game. In retrospect, I think that it wasn't so much that nobody wanted me on their team, at least that's what I'm telling myself now, but I think it was that these women were intimidated by the idea of mentorship, and they weren't altogether sure what it was I was asking for. Most teens aren't necessarily going around asking adults to mentor them, but research shows us that they actually are looking for adults who believe in them and are willing to supportively build into their lives. Recently, a researcher asked teens what they get out of being mentored, and the top things were these: knowing they mattered, experiencing a sense of closeness, and knowing they were important to someone. Belonging and significance. This is what mentors bring, and those are powerful things. So, how does that look on a weekly basis? Well, here are a few ideas. Number 1, start with a plan. Chances are that if you've been uncertain about what mentoring is, they are too. So start the relationship by talking about mentoring, what they expect, what you expect, what this might look like, what they can count on. Pick a regular time to meet so that they can relax into knowing that they can count on you. And then be there if you said you would, even if they aren't. And when you're making your plan, let them know why you are excited about meeting with them. Number 2, build a relationship. Building something is an intentional thing. It implies that you realize that this thing isn't going to just magically exist. You're expecting to do some work to make it happen. So what does that mean? It means that you spend some time getting to know about them intentionally. Be a fan. Cheer them on in the things that are important to them. Find things that they can be an expert on and teach you about. Remember things that are important to them. Be an encourager. Tell them when you see good things in them. Do what you said you'd do. These are all part of forming a relationship. Number 3, ask some good questions. We're not really great at asking questions, but we need to do this not like a prosecutor in a courtroom, but like an explorer who believes that they are a treasure to be discovered. So what does that look like in my weekly mentoring times? Well, usually it starts with a topic, a happening, or even just an invitation to share something encouraging or something difficult that happened that week. The best questions are open-ended ones. That means ones that they can't answer easily with one word, like, tell me about your week, or what do you think's important to the kids at your school, or give me a picture that describes how you feel about that. Don't be afraid of silence, and don't be afraid to go first as a way of getting them to open up. Just remember that this time is about them and not about you. The other thing is, once you've asked some good questions, you also need to be good at listening to their answers and asking more questions about what they've just said. Feed back to them what you think they're saying as you seek to understand the way that they see things. And as you try to understand how the situations of their life are impacting them. Remember, before young people want to listen to us, they need to know that we're willing to listen to them. And the fourth thing is notice. Are there some repeated themes or similar stories? Are there things they never talk about, like faith or failure or friendship? Are there ways of seeing situations that are actually resulting in some difficulties for them? Are there some strong emotions that come up when certain topics are brought up? You need to ask for their permission to tell them something that you've noticed. And then ask, hey, have you noticed this too? Ask them what they think that means. And don't rush in with your answers. Just be satisfied to notice together as they discover more about who they are and how they're processing life. And number 5 is invite them to be near. Share life together. 3 times in his writing, Paul encouraged the believers he was talking to follow him as he was following Jesus. That takes guts. But one of the best ways for a young person to encounter the living Jesus is by watching how it looks for you to walk with Jesus in the everyday stuff of life. Like when you're irritated by traffic, or you forgot your friend's birthday, or you got yelled at work. Invite them into your faith journey, which just might include asking them to pray for you as you follow after Jesus. Mentoring is amazingly impactful, but let me warn you, the teens aren't the only ones who will be changed.
You won't know all of their problems or what's going on in their life unless if you can actually know them or talk to them and be there for them.
I think a lot of teenagers don't have the support that they need to want to succeed and to have ambitions and hopes and dreams. You need a good foundation for that. You need someone who cares.
When youth workers and anyone older than you kind of relates to you and just treats you as someone their age too, it makes a big difference for people.
Hi, my name is Cody Wilkinson, and I would like to tell you my story. I moved to Ponoka about 6 years ago. I was so lost and was at a point that I just completely rejected anything to do with God. During this time, my parents were into hard drugs such as crack. When I was 13 years old, my father got in a major car accident resulting from drug use that left him with permanent brain damage. My brothers and myself, the youngest, all lived in what used to be our home, but it turned into just a place to survive. My mom was always gone, trying to get the next hit. My brothers and I struggled very hard to get through this situation with as little problems as possible, but because of the gravity of the situation, a lot of anger rose in all 3 of us. We were always getting into fights. Our family was completely broken. The summer of my dad's accident, my mom was sent to a rehabilitation center in Calgary to get cleaned up. That summer, my brother and I got placed under social services and ended up in a group home in Ponoka, which was probably one of the worst things that could have happened. I made a lot of mistakes and sinned way more than any 14-year-old boy should even know how to do. I had a lot of built-up anger and frustration from my family and would take it out on people non-deserving of it by yelling at them or other horrible ways I regret. I also got involved in a relationship at this time that filled my life with many regrets. I was in the group home for 6 months, then I got moved to a foster home in town. The foster family was really nice, so that was an upside to my life so far. Right after I was put into the foster home, I met a friend whom today I can proudly call my brother. One day he and I were talking at the table and joking around, I said, "Wouldn't it be cool if your parents adopted me?" At the end of November that same year, I moved out of the foster home and into their home. I lived with their family for about 7 months, and in May, I was officially adopted. It made me feel so good that someone wanted me as a part of their family. They chose me instead of just having me. Even though my life was finally starting to turn around, I still had a lot of issues. I was hurting myself and cutting and suffered from severe depression. I was so depressed that I also had a lot of trust issues and a lot of social issues as well. It was hard for me to make friends because I couldn't trust anyone anymore after all I had faced with my family. Every couple of weeks I would spend my night absolutely bawling. I mean crying my heart out completely until I had no tears available to cry. During these times, I would also cry out to God even though I was absolutely convinced He wasn't there. Something in me was pulling me towards him. I would cry out with complete sincerity, "God, if you're there, please just give me a sign. Give me some sort of sign, God, that you are here." When I was 16, my new family helped me get a job. It was through this that I met someone who became an extremely important friend in my life. After about 6 months of working there, my friend told me about a trip she had gone on a couple times to Youth Unlimited. It was a missions trip to Vancouver. She had told me that she felt strongly that I should go on this trip, but I'd always veer away from the idea because I didn't want anything to do with God at the time. She finally convinced me to go, although just as a social justice trip. I wanted to help out the homeless. This trip was the defining moment of my life, and it changed me forever. Every single moment of that trip was a slap in the face to show me where I should be and what I should be doing in my life. Every hour on the trip, God showed me a different beauty and wonder of His, and it became overwhelming. During the worship on the trip, I recognized that I was missing out on something huge. I sang a song for our team that really was a cry out to God. After, I realized it wasn't a song to sing for the people around me. It was a prayer, a plea to God to come and save my life. Needless to say, the bus ride home the next day, I became a Christian and prayed the prayer of salvation. This was such an amazing experience because I knew that, just as my new family had adopted me, God the Father had adopted me into His family as well.
Years ago, when I was a young adults pastor at a large church, I was working over the lunch hour, and all the other pastors had left the office. So the receptionist called down and asked if she could send a woman in who was asking to see a pastor, but was in a hurry because she had to get back to work. So this woman rushes into my office and sits down and says to me, "So I've been attending here for a few weeks, and this God stuff really makes sense, so I'm here to become a Christian, but I only have 15 minutes. Can you lead me through that?" I don't know about you, but most of the time strangers aren't inviting me to lead them to Jesus out of the blue. But even the teens I know and am investing in regularly aren't often asking me to take them closer to the heart of God. It doesn't mean that that's not where they want to go, but it could just be that they need an invitation. Most often, the invitation toward Jesus needs to come from us first. So how do we do that? Here's the first thing. Don't assume that you know what they are thinking about God. Ask them. That might involve sharing the ongoing story of you and God first, like things you're discovering or questioning or enjoying, and then asking them what their story with God is today. Their story may be shifting, just like yours does, so keep asking. Here's a second thing. Don't get distracted by trying to get them to behave before they believe. We need to invite teens to meet Jesus in the middle of their life and find that He loves them right where they are. Let the experience of being loved by Jesus change them, and keep reminding them that His love for them is real, whether they're ready to deal with it yet or not. A third thing, ask their permission to give them some options. What do I mean by that? Well, a friend of mine always ends conversations about Jesus with a check back. Something like this. "We've talked about God now and then, but I really don't know where you're at with Him. Can I give you 3 options and you tell me which one fits you? First one, you've got no interest in talking about God stuff and can't wait till I shut up. Second one, something inside you wants to hear more. Or are you the third one? You want God in your life, but you don't know what that looks like." Those are 3 examples, and they're also the beginning of the next great conversation. Here's the fourth thing. Direct them to Jesus. Information is useful, but Jesus Himself is the truth, and He wants them to know Him. He's going to be with them long after you've gone home, so invite them to talk to Him. Ask them to try an experiment. Unplug for 5 minutes, maybe at bedtime, and simply say something to Jesus. They can ask Him what He thinks of them. They can tell Him what's worrying them, or they can tell Him what they think of Him. Maybe they could even pray for you, just like you're praying for them. Whatever they do, they are opening the window for the Spirit to slip in and begin to lead them into all truth, into the heart of the God who loves them and is waiting for them. Our job isn't to connect kids to a solution or to a list of beliefs or even a way of behaving. It's connecting them to a person. The good news isn't that everything in their life will magically be better or even that they don't have to go to hell. It's way bigger and way better than that. The good news is Jesus waiting for them to come home to Him. So don't keep them waiting. Take a deep breath, embrace the awkwardness, be intentional, and invite kids to take the next step toward God from wherever they are right now.